In what might be one of the most bleakly ironic appeals of the year, Viola Garcia and Chip Slavin, the president and interim executive director, respectively, of the government parasite-filled National School Boards Association, that would be the NSBA, on September 29th, sent an open letter to Joe Biden calling on him to deploy a wide array of federal forces against parents and other taxpayers who speak out against leftist pedagogy in public schools. Because, of course, nothing more perfectly says openness and diversity of opinion than tax-funded school bureaucrats calling for the intimidation into silence of those who have to pay their salaries. Hi everyone, I'm Gardner Goldsmith for MRC-TV. Here is the story. The letter says, quote, "On behalf of our state associations and the more than 90,000 school board members who govern our country's 14,000 local public school districts, educating more than 50 million school children, the NSBA appreciates your leadership to end the proliferation of COVID-19 in our communities and our school districts. We also appreciate recent discussions with White House and U.S. Department of Education staff on many critical issues facing public schools, including threats school officials are receiving." End quote. So, separate from the political intent of the message, one also can note the troubling fact that this organization and its members have such power over 50 million kids and over the people forced to pay for the ideology these school boards push on the kids. Then there's the political intent of the letter, which is to portray as terrorist threats, evidently, those concerned parents who turn out at local school board meetings, and to claim a bizarre federal role via all things the Constitution's Interstate Commerce Clause to investigate them. Get this. From the letter, quote, "NSBA believes immediate assistance is required to protect our students, school board members, and educators who are susceptible to acts of violence affecting interstate commerce because of threats to their district, families, and personal safety." Even if this absurd claim of affecting interstate commerce were valid, federal intervention would be inappropriate because, as James Madison wrote, during the founding era, the Interstate Commerce Clause was written to stop states imposing tariffs on each other, not to allow the feds to micromanage anything that in some possible way could have a glancing effect on some aspect of interstate trade. Then there's the NSBA argument that vigilante-like parents and other taxpayers are keeping watch lists on school boards, that these folks are errantly claiming school districts are hell-bent on teaching racist critical race theory, and that people are mistaken if they believe school-based interests have worked over the past year to keep schoolrooms closed and keep classes operating online. They write, quote, "Other groups are posting watch lists against school boards and spreading misinformation that boards are adopting critical race theory curriculum and working to maintain online learning by haphazardly attributing it to COVID-19, end quote. So parents and taxpayers can't keep track of where school board members stand on what policies? Then why in the world do candidates running for those offices offer their positions on policies if people can't be allowed to find out what the policy positions are? And by the way, records haven't shown that powerful school union interests actually did work with the CDC to keep schools closed longer? Well then, perhaps this report, stating precisely that, must come from a parallel universe. To top it off, the NSBA claims that those who believe boards are adopting critical race theory are misinformed, even as they mix in hints that those who are misinformed are engaged in threatening protests. They cite a leftist non-governmental organization called the Armed Conflict Location and Event Data Project, ACLED, and its so-called fact sheet, Demonstrations Over Critical Race Theory in the United States. But about critical race theory demonstrations? Well, that document itself admits this in a footnote. Quote, ACLED does not code whether an event was in favor or against CRT. End quote. As author and journalist Jeff Reynolds observes for Legal Insurrection, quote, ACLED's so-called fact sheet attempts to make the case that opposition to CRT only became widespread after President Donald Trump issued an executive order banning it from trainings for federal employees in 2020. The obvious implication is that opposition to CRT is in itself a racist ideology. In making its case, ACLED cites a report from Media Matters for America, David Brock's far-left media watchdog site. End quote. Ah, yes. David Brock and Media Matters. Very unbiased and incredibly trustworthy. Adds Reynolds, quote, to hear NSBA, AASA, that's the American Association of School Administrators, ACLED, and Media Matters tell it, the opposition to CRT in schools is nothing more than a Fox News creation designed to rile up uneducated and, by implication, racist conservatives. End quote. Then the NSBA makes more broad and unsupported claims, citing an editorial from the Everett, Washington Herald in which the editors decried not actual violence, but noisy and outspoken parents at a school board meeting. And the NSBA authors use terms like threats and acts of violence to prep, of course, for their big tag team show that's coming with the feds. Quote, as these threats and acts of violence have become more prevalent during public school board meetings via documented threats transmitted through the U.S. Postal Service, through social media and other online platforms, and around personal properties, NSBA respectfully asks that a joint collaboration among federal law enforcement agencies, state and local law enforcement, and with public school officials be undertaken to focus on these threats. Ah, yes, the U.S. Postal Service, another attempt to claim a federal role in investigating any local person who speaks out against their local school board. Now, if a specific person sends a threat through the USPS to a specific person or named group of people, that person, under federal statute, can be investigated on a federal level. But NSBA offered no evidence of this. And they continue with the coup de grace. Quote, NSBA specifically solicits the expertise and resources of the U.S. Department of Justice, Federal Bureau of Investigation, FBI, U.S. Department of Homeland Security, U.S. Secret Service, and its National Threat Assessment Center. End quote. And as Reynolds notes, wouldn't you know it, White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki responded to the NSBA letter expressing similar concern. Then, late in the day Monday, October 4th, Attorney General Merrick Garland announced that he and the Bidenistas are going to mobilize the FBI against these not parents. We have to use the government terminology, against these potential threats. Almost as if this is a big publicity stunt by like-minded collectivists to shut down dissent and reinforce the narrative that those who oppose CRT and other leftist pedagogy in government schools are actually terrorists on the brink. Would that include Daily Wire's Matt Walsh? After all, he recently spoke to MRC-TV when he appeared at a local school board meeting in Loudoun County, Virginia. He was protesting the school board propagandizing kids with LGBTQ sexuality and critical race theory. Oh, and by the way, critical race theory, CRT, assumes a person is guilty of implicit racism simply on the account of his skin color at birth. Yeah, i.e., it is racist itself. Is Walsh not the government-backed bureaucracy calling on the feds and their security state to investigate tax-paying parents like Walsh? Is Walsh actually the threat? Well, that might strike a resonant Orwellian chord with those who understand collectivist propaganda and dark irony. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. Thank you so much for sticking up for freedom. And to all those people who have been going to those school board meetings all over the country, keep it up. Hey, remember, I'll see you in the comments section in YouTube. I'll see you on Rumble. Rumble doesn't censor us. Our videos are housed there. Please head over there and subscribe. We'll see you on TikTok, on Instagram, in Facebook, of course, and all the time at MRCTV.org. You can find me on Gab. It's at Gardner Goldsmith on Gab, and I'm on Twitter at Gard Goldsmith on Twitter. For MRC TV, I'm Gardner Goldsmith.